Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dawn Network's first ever podcast called Dusk Till Dawn. Now, before I introduce our lovely guest who has kindly agreed to come on this week, I thought it would be worth explaining the aim of the podcast and why the name is what it is, considering it is the first episode. So, to start off, the broader aim of the podcast, if you will, is to really dive into each week's disability and clear up any common misconceptions people may have, as well as to add to people's knowledge on that specific topic. So there is so many different types of disabilities, whether they be physical, whether they be mental, and because of that, there is a lot of common misconceptions and even some disabilities, or a lot, I should say, that people are unaware of. So it would be great to spread the sort of awareness on that front. Now, regarding the name, Dusk Till Dawn, yes, you may have guessed it. Having the abbreviation Dawn in there was massively a bonus. But the whole point behind the name was linked to the aim of the podcast. So at dusk, it's dark. Perhaps there's some asymmetric information, if you will, around these different topics, a lot of different misconceptions. And then by dawn, when the light comes up, i.e. the end of the podcast, this asymmetric information should hopefully be minimized to some extent. So I hope that clears up briefly the aim and the name of the podcast. So I guess without further ado, it's a pleasure to welcome our first guest, Sam Derrick. So how are we, Sam?
Very good, Ed. Thanks. Thanks for the introduction, and delighted to be the first guest on the podcast.
Thanks for joining me. I think to start off then, it might actually be worth going into a bit of background around yourself, regarding what you do at Centrica, how you got into that role, and sort of why you decided to be part of the Dawn Network.
Sure. Okay. So my role, I'm a project coordinator in the HR consultancy. So I do reporting around the projects that are going on, and some general coordination for the team as well. My history is largely as a PA, so I've been in the company coming up 18 years, but just needed to try a different role out. But being a PA has given me a good background with different experiences that have transferred well into the role. As far as being part of the Dawn Network, I have my own disability, so it resonated with me as a network, and I just wanted to be able to help others if I can and try and improve lives.
Yeah, was the Dawn Network something that you got involved in sort of at the start of your career at Centrica, or more towards the latter end?
No, I think the Dawn Network's it's only been going for a few years, so I think I joined about a year after it had started. So it hadn't been around for the whole time.
Yeah, 18 years, by the way, is a massively long time. So you must be enjoying it.
Yeah, no, I've really liked working for the business, actually. It does have its changes, but it's always just been a really good business to work in, and I've developed so much since I've been here.
If we should we just dive straight into what you've come to chat about today?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So I guess the first thing is, what is the disability, and perhaps could you give a brief description and summary of what it is for everyone listening?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of conditions. So I've got a couple of spinal defects, and I've also been diagnosed with fibromyalgia and or chronic fatigue. So it's a bit of an and or, because some of the condition symptoms overlap, and also because I've got underlying conditions with pain anyway, it's a bit hard to sort of define which it is. So for me, my main problem is pain and tiredness. So I had to have a spinal fusion in 2017 because I've had back pain since I was 18 years old. Managed it for a long time, got really fit and managed to just keep things going. But one of my discs eroded because I've got an extra vertebrae. So I had to have a titanium cage put in. But since then, I've got pain again because I've had another condition in my spine called pseudoarthrosis, which is a couple of extra bone spurs that come out of the lower vertebrae. So I think they tend to rub on the other bones, which can be quite painful. And as far as fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue goes, it means, sometimes I can get very tired. I'd sometimes get an overall body pain, like I've had the flu. So I really have to figure out how to pace myself with work, but I also still need to fit in exercise and home stuff. So yeah, it can be challenging to just try and fit everything in but not exhaust myself.
I was going to actually ask about how that would impact your day-to-day life. So if we just started with exercise for one, I bet it makes the task 10 times more difficult.
It can do. So whereas I used to do quite full-on hard workouts, sort of 4 or 5 days a week, now if I exercise by stretching and some gentle muscle stuff, so I can't go into the full-on kettlebells and weights and stuff like I used to. But I have to keep moving, otherwise things get quite seized up.
Is that pain sort of a pain that's got worse over time as well?
Yeah, and it changes. There's so many different types. So I might get just a bit like I've done a workout the previous day, or as I said, sometimes like a full-on flu body ache. I've got a shoulder problem as well, so I get specific shoulder pain. As far as my back pain goes, sometimes it can feel like a tightness, and sometimes it can feel like a bit like a metal spike in the bottom of my back.
Yeah. Oh, that's not ideal.
Yeah,
that's not ideal. My dad always moans about his lower back, so I'm going to bring that up to him now. And tell him he hasn't got a chance with it. But no, that's a lot of stuff to take on day to day. And I suppose how have you coped with that from such a young age, like you said, to now?
I suppose in a way you develop a certain amount of resilience. Obviously, sometimes you have to take medication to manage it, but not ideal because they have other side effects. So it's sort of taken when you have to. I think because I've had it from such a young age, you develop a new pain baseline. So you have, a certain level of pain that you tend to be used to, and then it's a higher level that tends to floor you. But yeah, you never get used to it per se, but it's just a case of coping with it and learning how to not let it get you down all the time. So and not letting it get you down all the time. So obviously it affects what I can do on a day-to-day basis, particularly the evenings, as I tend to get worse in the evening. So sometimes it's just adapting, finding other ways to do things, finding new things to do to keep myself entertained.
I think that sort of piece of advice can resonate with people's just daily life experience as well. Just sort of if there is some sort of difficulty you have there, you just get on with it and you make the most of it.
Yeah.
And if you do let it get you down, then it just makes everything worse, I suppose. But regarding sort of like higher pain barriers, so if you just relate it to something more generalized, for example, going to the gym, once you've gone for quite a while, you get used to it. You get used to the pain after working, a couple sets in.
Yeah.
Sort of builds your resilience up. Sorry, over time.
Sort of analogy, yeah.
Is there anything that you think could be done on more of a wider, more global scale, if you like, for what you experience, or what would you like seeing done? Is there anything that you've seen done before that you'd like to be implemented in the UK, for example?
I think it's probably about understanding pain. So research has come on a lot because pain is very, very complex. So you've got your basic pain, where your body, something hurts, you touch something that's too hot, body says, or your brain says, oh, there's pain, move your hand away. So that's your basic primary pain. But you can then get different types of pain. So the fibromyalgia is probably more of a what they call a secondary pain. So something in my neural pathways has triggered something that makes me feel pain when there's nothing mechanically wrong. And then there's obviously my back, which, there is something going on, and that causes me a chronic pain. So I think it's to do with, understanding how sort of the psychology of pain works as well, and also the effect it has on you, because when you're in pain, it's draining to deal with it, and it's always like you've got another distraction in your mind as well. So you're doing your normal stuff. And particularly if you're having a bad day, you've got that nagging at you as well. So it's just how people cope. I mean, there is some research being done on mindfulness and other bits, but it's just a hugely complex subject. So I just think it's just continuing research in the understanding of how pain works.
And I think that's very similar in a lot of different disabilities that come in, right? Because there are so many. A lot of people just sort of let it fly over their heads regarding the information that comes to them, where spreading awareness on that front, like you say, it would really, really help out.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's about openness, talking. So I know obviously we've done a lot of work on discussing mental health, which is
Yeah.
amazing. Mental health obviously links into disabilities as well because can have a massive impact on your mental health. But yeah, just keeping on communicating. So for me, being able to work from home is a massive bonus because if
Mm.
I'm in the office and my pain gets bad, so it's a real sharp pain, that can be a real distraction for driving. So yeah, just being able to work flexibly, knowing I can just take a bit of a rest if I need to and then come back to it, being able to move about when I need to. So yeah, just having patience and talking about it and make sure you understand the needs of someone who's suffering chronic pain.
And on that note, actually, I can imagine that there is sort of talks going around at the moment. What happens after COVID? Around, going into the office? Is it going to be 9 to 5, Monday to Friday anymore? Is there going to be a lot more time spent at home? So I think that point around it just being generally easy for yourself to have days working at home or potentially working the whole week at home, it just makes things a lot more simpler. And you can be a lot more productive like that as well, I suppose.
Yeah,
Do you find yourself being more productive
I
on that
do
front?
actually, because it's obviously not having to sort of get up at a certain, get up at an earlier time to get ready, to get in the car, to get to the office. Being able to have that just bit more time to get my body moving, wake myself up. It gives me more time to get myself in a better state to then start work. And yeah, as I've said, having that flexibility, it does mean, I am a lot more productive at home, I think.
So I think if we flash it back, if you don't mind us flashing it back to sort of, you mentioned that I think one of the discs eroded in your spine. Was it? So was that one of the ones that started from a young age and then it sort of, a lot of the other ones just come later on, or did they all come at once?
Well, I suppose so. With me, it's the two main problems. So,
Yeah.
I think I had an extra vertebrae, one that should have
Okay.
fused with one of the other ones when you grow, is when you're younger, but it didn't. So that meant my spine was a lot more flexible than it should have been. So that caused sort of more movement between my S1 and L5 vertebrae, which meant the disc that sits between those two vertebrae just eroded away. So there was, this really sort of skinny, flat bit of a disc that had to be removed. And the other thing, the pseudoarthrosis, which is the extra bone spurs, again, it's just, something I was born with that then, causes problems as you get older.
Yeah. We mentioned the impact on your day-to-day life, and it can be quite substantial at times. But does it potentially even impact the people around you?
It can do. So partly that sometimes I might need a bit more help. Fortunately, not too much at the moment. So I think that can be quite heartbreaking sometimes because when I get bad, there are times I've had to crawl to bed because I just can't walk
Oh,
because the
wow.
pain's so sharp. And yeah, so I have my mum and my boyfriend in the house. There's the three of us. So yeah, when they see me in that sort of state, that can be a little heartbreaking for them. So the emotional impact for them is probably the biggest factor.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Yeah, it sounds tough. I mean, she brought you a cup of tea this morning. So I've seen the love inside firsthand briefly. But yeah, no, that's good stuff, Sam. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think that's all the questions I have for you, Sam. So thank you very, very much for coming onto the show and answering all the questions that I have chucked at you today. I can understand it is a very personal topic of conversation, so it isn't easy at all, but hopefully it'll filter through Centrica as a brilliant way of informing individuals, as well as a great way of spreading awareness. So I really, really appreciate your time coming on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure as always. But lastly, before we go, is there any place people could perhaps grab more information on your disability that you mentioned? Any websites, maybe even, another podcast, or maybe just a simple matter of just sliding into your teams and asking a few more questions?
Yeah, sometimes just asking questions. Curiosity, I think, is the main thing. Curiosity with respect, obviously. But I'm generally happy to answer questions. Sometimes, just a bit of a Google search looking at sort of sensible websites. So, things like the NHS or WebMD are generally quite good, because you get, a lot of varying information. But just a bit of research and asking questions.
Brilliant stuff. So thank you very, very much again for coming onto the podcast. And also thank you very much for everybody who's listened in to the first Dawn Network podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. Until next time.